Good evening and welcome to the ADRA Insider. Thank you for tuning in to our broadcast this evening. We are going live this evening to announce our major campaign that we are launching as ADRA Canada this fall called Justice at the Table. And we wanted to invite you and be able to share with you our plan so that you can be starting to think about this and start praying about it, talk with your friends, church members, school, to see the different ways that you might become involved in our campaign. Tonight, I will have a number of guests to share that information. My first guest is Pastor Paul, recently elected as the president of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada. Thank you for joining us for the broadcast this evening. You know, I don't know if our viewers know this, but one of the things that the president does, one of their roles is to become the chair of the ADRA board.
That's true.
So that's another good reason to
another
have
new
you,
role.
have you with us this evening to lead out in the launch or pre-launch of this campaign. I wonder, Pastor, if I could ask you to open our service. Let's call it a service because it is Friday night.
That's right.
Kind of a worship event, it can be.
In Eastern Canada, the Sabbath is coming in.
Yes. So I wonder if I could ask you to lead us in prayer.
Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you that we can gather together, Lord, as a people through the virtual signals that are going across our nation, Lord. And as we gather together to talk about a very important issue, Lord, with ADRA Canada, I pray that, Lord, you will bless all of our membership across Canada. And, Lord, here at ADRA, as we seek to help those around the world and in our own country that are going through hardships. So I pray that, Lord, we will be a people that will be there to stand by, to do what we can, to help the people out around the world, and to make sure, Lord, that we lift up your name high, even if it's without mentioning any words. I also pray that, Lord, you'll be with us as the Sabbath hours come over us, and help us to have a wonderful rest in you. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. You have been a Seventh-day Adventist Church member in Canada for your whole life, is that right?
Most of my life, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when we moved back from Germany, my mom started attending church again.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And you have served as a teacher, a principal,
youth director, educational superintendent. I've done a lot except treasury. That's not my fine point, and I'm glad we have treasurers to do that work.
Yes, I am thankful for our treasurers as well.
That's right.
So you come with a lot of experience, and I'm sure a lot of people, so a lot of our viewers probably know you because of your service across Canada.
Right.
But for those of our viewers who don't know, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your experience as you have served in many different capacities.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to go back to my very beginning, that part of my upbringing, being a Seventh-day Adventist, I grew up in Ontario for most of my early childhood and teen years. But one of the things that had a big impact on me was ingathering.
Okay.
And I know we don't do that too much anymore, but my dad used to be the ingathering leader for our church.
Wow.
And we had the highest amount of money come in during those years that he was doing that, along with Ken Corkum and a few members that would do ingathering all year long. So that was my start. So I grew up in our church here in Ontario, being a part of it, and working with ADRA to do our ingathering goals. But then I grew up. I got older, looked at life career. I wanted to go into ministry, but I didn't know if my parents would be okay with that. So I went into education instead. But I'd still promised God that I wanted to become a minister, and taught for 13 years. And then God just said, Paul, now it's time. And he started moving me that direction into ministry, and, ran a few of our youth camps as a youth director, camp director, and, looked over our schools in the East Coast. And then God just started moving more into administration. And so I've enjoyed that journey. I enjoyed God's leading. And so now, sometimes he just says, Paul, this is where you're going. And I follow. Yes. Wherever he wants me to go, I'm going to go.
Well, it's wonderful. Yeah. And you say you started out quite young with ADRA and the in-gathering campaign. I actually can think back and remember being a 10-year-old boy running from door to door with a little can And
Those were great memories.
yes,
Yeah.
I enjoyed those
Yeah.
days. And I served as a pastor for a while and know about that in-gathering goal. Back then, it was one of the jobs of the pastor
Yeah.
to make sure that they got that goal.
That's right.
I've heard you talk about how you have been a supporter of ADRA as well
Yes.
over the years.
Yeah.
Maybe you can share with us a little bit about your reason for supporting ADRA and your passion for ADRA.
Well, when I was pastoring in Eastern Canada, uh, I saw the what we would do as churches. I had three churches, and we would raise our funds for ADRA every year. But one of the things I really enjoyed seeing was that money coming back to our communities, where our churches would involve themselves in choosing projects that they could be involved in to help their community out, so that they were, helping the community, lifting up their church through ADRA. And it had a big impact on our church, knowing that they were intimately involved in helping the community through their ADRA goal each year. And that had a huge impact on our church members, and I really enjoyed seeing that. The other thing is, the work that ADRA does internationally is incredible. I took our youth group from the Maritimes. We joined with the Ontario Conference, and we went down to St. Lucia with ADRA to replace a water cistern that just they didn't have the funds to finish it, and we finished it. And it was a really wonderful time for our young people, for my own kids, to be a part of, to know that they did something to bring water to a community. And when we were building that water cistern, the people of the community came out, and they told us that they were lucky to have water for 2 hours a week.
Oh, wow.
And this would make sure that whenever they turned on their taps, they had water. And so ADRA has had a big impact, and that made a large impact on the young people that went on this mission trip with ADRA. And many of them today are working for NGOs.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So it impacted them as well.
That's right.
Yeah. And you talk about raising the annual church goal for ADRA. Are churches still doing that these days?
I think they are. We're seeing a resurgence. The people miss that, especially our older generation. And I think our younger generation have missed out on that door-to-door experience. And I know that the world's changing, and door-to-door experiences are not as plentiful as they were before. But there's opportunities to do in-gathering goals through different means of involving the community. Communities love to be involved. And so I think more than ever, our churches are wanting to get involved in the communities. They might not know how to do it, but when we are raising money for ADRA, our communities that surround our homes and surround our churches, surrounding our schools, want to get involved. And so I think this is an awesome opportunity where we can help people get involved, and to see that there's things that we can do around the world and in our own country to help each other out. And somehow when a church does that, the people start looking at those within the church differently. And they start asking questions. And all of a sudden, a church that, has been isolated on their own, the community starts getting involved in them. And, just like the community gardens that ADRA has been working with around the country, that has involved the communities in an incredible way, and putting our churches as a real place of not just worship, but community, a place of community help, involvement, where they're part of the social structure of the community.
Well, it's so nice to hear how supportive you have been over the years, and we look forward to your leadership now in your new position as board chair of ADRA. Well, I want to thank you for being with us, Pastor Paul, to launch our pre-launch event here this evening. I wonder, just before you leave, if you might have a special word to the church members across Canada about ADRA and about this appeal.
One of the major focuses at the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada, along with ADRA Canada, is to make sure that our churches are involved in the communities. So as we have these campaigns going, make sure you're going out in the community to involve your community as part of the fundraising goal, so that the community knows that they can help out. And it's just not on the the responsibility of the church members to come up with a sponsorship, that we're going out there doing fundraisers. Maybe it's a car wash, maybe you're selling your garden produce that you've made over the summer from your community garden. But go out there and involve the community. Communities want to know that the church that might be there in the corner or the other side of town has a vested interest in them. And when we come up with projects like we have that we're launching here at ADRA, make sure you're involving the community. Make sure you're getting to know their names. Because when you get to know their names, they'll come back later on and want to question you about your faith. They might ask to attend your church. They might ask to attend your Christmas program. So go out there, reach our communities, involve our communities in the fundraising goal. They want to be involved. They just need somebody to ask them to be involved.
Thank you very much for that.
All right.
My next guest is the newest member of our ADRA Canada family, Grant Hillier. He has only been on the job for about 2 weeks now. But even though he only has 2 weeks with ADRA Canada, he has many, many years of experience in responding to world hunger. He started out his career with ADRA, and then for the last 11 years, he has been serving for the Canadian Food Grains Bank. And that is the main thing that they do, is work to end hunger around the world. And so we are so grateful and thankful that he has joined ADRA, especially at this time when there is a major crisis happening in our world today. So let's bring him on. Because he's in Calgary, we're going to have him come on remotely. And I'm going to need to put on the headphones for this. Well, Grant, thank you so much for being with us today. I've just been telling our viewers how you are perhaps the newest member of ADRA Canada, but that's not to say that you don't have a lot of experience with ADRA. Can you tell us a little bit about your work background with ADRA and the work in the humanitarian sector?
Yeah, so I started with ADRA a long time ago. It was meant to just be a 6-month volunteer stint, and that's turned into 25 years of humanitarian assistance and community development. So I was not expecting that. So yeah, it started in Cambodia, and then I was 4 years there, and then went to ADRA Australia for nearly 5 years, and then to Laos for 5 years, and then I left ADRA for the Canadian Food Grains Bank, which is a Canadian-based organisation that works in food security programming specifically. And I was with them for 11 years, and now, 2022, I'm back with ADRA and ADRA Canada.
Yes, and we're so thankful and grateful that you have rejoined the ADRA family and can bring all of your expertise with you, especially during these days when there's such a need around the world. You know, as I have been working in humanitarian sector as well, I've been telling people the last 4 or 5 years how we're making a lot of progress, that there's less people hungry today than there was 10 years ago, and kind of letting people know that the support that they have been giving has been helpful and it's making a difference. But now, as you do some research, you find that things are changing, and there's more people hungry now than there were 3 or 4 years ago. Could you share with our viewers a little bit about what has caused the change? Why have we fallen back?
I think the probably the most recent driver of that is increases in food prices, particularly over the last 2 years, where food increases have been around 40% in a lot of countries for staple
40,
foods.
40%.
40%, yeah. So the availability is there, but of course, access is an increasing challenge. And, tonight, over 800 million people will go to bed hungry. 50 million people in 45 countries are on the edge of famine right now. Yeah, it's as an industry, we felt like I think we were making some progress, but continued conflict, which I would say is probably the number one driver of global food insecurity. You just have to watch the news to see it all around us. And I think I read a stat not long ago, 60% of the world's hungry are living in areas afflicted by war and violence. And so, until we can get along, one of the consequences is going to be, this poverty and food insecurity.
Inflation, wars and conflicts. I imagine supply chain disruptions is a part of that.
Yeah.
Has COVID had a factor in all of this?
I'm sure it has. I'm not an expert on that, so I'm not sure exactly, how to describe that. But I would say more significant than that would be climate shocks. And a good example of that is the Horn of Africa right now, where, we have, probably 20 million people who are affected by acute food insecurity right now. And they are in parts of Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia. They're going through their 5th consecutive drought. In some parts of the country, the least rain I read recently, the 2022 rainfall was the lowest in 70 years. And so in those countries, people are reliant, their livelihoods are dependent on rainfall. And so you can imagine the impact that's having on food security.
Now, when you talk about climate shocks, that's not just always about droughts, is it?
Yeah, no, it's flooding, it's storms, it's all different kinds of climatic events.
Wildfires here in Canada, for sure, and the west coast of the U.S. It's so many things are causing disruption to people's lives these days.
Yeah, for sure.
What type of response is ADRA planning or is already engaged in the Horn of Africa right now to deal with this emergency?
Yeah, well, currently we have 2 projects that are commencing in Somalia and in Kenya. They're providing cash transfers for food assistance, so increasing food consumption of project recipients, and they are planned to run for the next 6 to 8 months.
Okay. Now, when you say cash transfers, this is kind of a change, isn't it? I remember the first time that I realized that Canada was helping. I was out in Croatia. They took me to this warehouse, this big warehouse where it was just filled with bags from Canada, the Canadian Food Grains Bank, the organization that you were working for prior to coming to ADRA. This was 96, I believe it was. And this is a time, I think, when the Canadian farmers were donating a portion of their crop to the Canadian Food Grains Bank. And they would bag those up and put them in containers and send them to wherever there was a need. How have things changed since 1996? How do we do hunger relief today?
Yeah, it's certainly changed from those days when the Canadian Food Grains Bank was sending grain overseas. That doesn't happen anymore. That in 2008, the Canadian government untied aid, which allowed organisations like the Canadian Food Grains Bank to program with cash rather than sending surplus grain. So, that's much more efficient, much more cost efficient. It's much more timely. Responses are able to provide food types that recipients are familiar with. And it also protects local markets. Obviously, dumping an excessive amount of product into a foreign market can affect local prices.
Oh, yes, for sure.
So
We've learned a lot over the years, haven't we,
Yeah.
in how we do
sure.
development and relief work. Yeah. And this is so much better. So now, say in Somalia or Kenya, when you're going into a community that is really experiencing hunger as a result of drought, you're not coming in with a bag of food, or are they getting an e-transfer? I know in Kenya they have this system where you can get money on your phone. Is that how it works in Kenya?
Yeah, it's called the transfer modality, and that varies from context to context and what's most appropriate. Sometimes it is an in-kind food basket where there might be some grain, some beans, and some oil, for example, as a monthly food transfer. But in other contexts where there's markets, where markets are accessible, um, then it's, you can use cash. You can provide cash to recipients either in form of vouchers, or it can be through, in Somalia we use the phone, where we transfer to the mobile phone, and then the recipients are able to pass on that credit to vendors to purchase the food that they need.
I can see how the phone system would be so much better. The last time I was in Somalia and I went to the marketplace, people had suitcases full of the local currency to try and buy some vegetables. It was just an incredible thing. But now they can just go to the market and with their phone pay for food that way. They can transfer funds from their phone to the vendor's phone, I guess.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's called mobile money, and it's very effective. It's very efficient, and it's a preference of a lot of recipients. It gives them much more, I guess, agency over what they purchase, and
Right.
they can tailor their purchase for their particular household needs.
Oh, yeah. There's so many ways why it's better. Well, I want to thank you so much for explaining all of that to us and taking your time today to be on our program. Really appreciate that, Grant. And
You're welcome, Frank.
One small piece of bread a day is nowhere near enough. Growing crops in desert sand is arduous and tough. There's no way to make ends meet with nothing left to sell. Hungry, thirsty, what's for supper? There's no way to tell. Overwhelmed, what can I? A single soul so many miles away even begin to do? Can I turn my back when a sister suffers? What would the Savior have done? Thunderstorms brought down the house, a wasteland here instead. I don't know where to turn or go now that all hope has fled. An unrelenting sun is leaving, no shade to be found. Flies, disease, and filth are working hard to bring you down. Overwhelmed, what can I? A single soul 1,000 miles away even begin to do? Can I turn my back when a brother suffers? What would the Master have done? One life, changing one life at a time, one step, taking one step can change the world.
there is a hunger crisis in our world. 825 million people are going hungry every night. ADRA Canada is launching a major response to save lives in 13 of the hardest hit countries. You can help ADRA restore justice at the table. Joining me right now here in the studio is our Executive Director, Steve Matthews. We've heard now from Grant about the reasons why there's a rise in hunger these days. And I wanted to bring you in and have you share your passion about the work of ADRA and tell us a little bit about some of the ways that ADRA is responding to this crisis and how we're planning to continue.
Well, first, Frank, I don't think that anybody should have to go to bed hungry. We have the resources, there are the means that are out there. And what we're trying to do is be able to reach those that are really struggling. And our focus is going to be on those that are really at the the most extreme levels of hunger around the world. Especially when we look at East Africa, for example, we're seeing that as we continue going through this year, they're in the 5th year of drought now in many parts of Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, those countries. So what we're looking at is trying to provide that life-saving aid to people in those countries so that we can take them from the brink of famine and really try to bring the malnourished back to a more healthier status of being, and trying to really just prevent people from essentially starving to death right now, which is a real significant concern around the world when it comes to hunger.
Now, in order to do the work that we do here at ADRA, of course, we look to our supporters and friends, donors from across Canada, and even some from around the world to help us with this. Now, this is a major campaign of needing to raise $2.4 million. And we're just wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the way that the churches can become involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about that $2.4 million, the beauty about the partnerships that we're able to form with other organizations and being part of the Canadian Food Grains Bank is that we're able to multiply those funds as well. Our churches can get involved by helping to just raise funds that will become matched with our partnership projects, and to be able to really grow those funds. So there are many different ways that our churches are able to get involved. If they go to adra.ca/hunger, we have resources there, and we also have resources that can be made available to the churches to help them with those fundraising initiatives.
Now, we've prepared a video where you're speaking directly to the churches. Maybe let's take a look at that right now.
Great. For over 825 million people in the world right now, a solid, nutritious meal is an unattainable dream. Of this number, 345 million are forced by circumstances beyond their control to make drastic sacrifices to survive. Despite such desperate efforts by devoted parents, malnutrition still ends up causing nearly half of all deaths in children under the age of 5. The effects of war, disease, and politics are all at play. The cost of bananas in South Sudan has now reached 58% of the average daily wage. If that was the case in Canada, it would make a bunch of bananas cost $125. Droughts brought on by the forces of climate change have brought about famine conditions in several East African countries. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, extreme levels of inflation have made food unaffordable, and in Ukraine and surrounding countries, the war has cut many people off from their basic needs. In all these circumstances, children, the elderly, and the disabled often pay the heaviest price. While Canadians are not immune to these changes, the malnutrition and starvation being faced in countries with more drastic circumstances are worse than many of us can imagine. For these struggling nations, the problem is about more than just hunger. The people we are describing also have been deprived of a voice, of the ability to change their circumstances. They lack not only food on their table, but also a seat at the table. That is why ADRA Canada is launching a new campaign, Justice at the Table. As part of the humanitarian arm of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, ADRA Canada has pledged to raise $2.4 million in the fight against hunger. This $2.4 million worth of food may sound like a lot, but it's only the beginning of what ADRA can accomplish. Our programs will certainly provide food to people in need, but they will also learn how to grow their own food in ways that are sustainable and resilient to climate change. By supporting ADRA, you will not just be giving food, but helping communities build resilience and self-sufficiency. Additionally, if ADRA Canada can successfully achieve its overall goal of raising $2.4 million, our partnerships with other organizations like the Canadian Food Grains Bank will help to increase that amount to $15 million. Every donation means much more than just the dollar amount. If each of the 75,000 Seventh-day Adventists in Canada gave just $32 to this campaign, we could easily achieve our goal. To get this effort moving, we are calling for at least 100 churches to join us in raising $500,000. With this foundation, we will be able to raise that $2.4 million for people in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Indonesia, Kenya, Laos, Lebanon, Moldova, Ukraine, Mozambique, Nepal, Somalia, Sudan, Venezuela, and Yemen. While it's clear that so many places are struggling, we must realize that global hunger is not about a lack of resources. This planet produces enough food to feed every person on it. God, our gracious Creator, has filled the earth with food and is consistently portrayed in Scripture as a provider and sustainer of this good creation. There is enough to go around. But global hunger is about the ways that people forget to care for each other as God intended. One of our church pioneers, Ellen White, unfortunately recognized these forces of inequality and hunger at work in her own time. She said, "All around us we see want and suffering. Families are in need of food. Little ones are crying for bread. The houses of the poor lack proper furniture and bedding. Many live in mere hovels, which are almost destitute of conveniences. The cry of the poor reaches to heaven. God sees. God hears." Thankfully, we see God's concern for the hungry and poor fully revealed in the life and teachings of Jesus. With Isaiah's words, Jesus said that he was anointed to proclaim good news to the poor. He taught that his judgment between the wicked and righteous would depend on how people treated the least of these. He sometimes described himself as a source of food, a well of living water, the bread of life, and the true vine. These words all symbolize the same ethos and spirit, to bring abundant life to humanity. True followers of Jesus have always taken that call to abundant life seriously. In the book of Acts, the early church followed Jesus by pooling their resources and selling their assets so that there were no needy persons among them. Christians today, as Christ's appointed hands and feet in this world, should be proud to pick up where those early Christians left off, demonstrating through our actions that Jesus still saves, still heals, and still feeds multitudes with their 5 small loaves of bread. If you would like to join ADRA in Christ's mission for justice, you can follow these steps. Express your interest in participating to your church board. Decide on a fundraising method and the amount of money your church aims to fundraise. Take this information and register your church at adra.ca/hunger. Once you are registered and have your goal set, you will be connected to ADRA Canada and all the other churches participating in the campaign. You will be able to track your progress in your own church and alongside other churches. And as you run your campaign, ADRA will provide you with resources, ideas, and tools for your fundraising efforts. As Christians, we are called to shine brightest in the world's darkest hour and to act with kindness and generosity when we see others suffering. There is no crisis in our world that Jesus has not already conquered. And as surely as the Lord prepares a table before us in the presence of our enemies, the church must now face down the enemies of hunger and injustice. The only sustainable future is love. It is time to dethrone hunger and to set a place for justice at the table.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that important message to our churches. I noticed that you mentioned Ukraine as being one of the countries that we'll be responding to, have actually ever since the war started, right? And I understand that you and a few others of our staff are making a journey over there to take a look at some of the projects. When are you leaving? And are you a little bit nervous about going into a war zone?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're leaving on Monday, and I try not to pay too much attention to the news these days, because just this morning I was reading about how Putin is mobilizing more soldiers
I read that as
into
well.
Ukraine.
Yeah.
So I put you a little bit on edge. Now, we're going to be going to Kiev, which right now, from all reports that I've been getting, is fairly secure. So where we're going is to visit where the internally displaced people within Ukraine have fled to.
So people have been fleeing to Kyiv now.
Yeah.
At one time they were leaving
Yeah.
Kyiv, and now they're...
Well, exactly. And right now, about 12 million people from Ukraine have been displaced, either outside of their borders or within the country. So what we're going over to do is actually go and visit the locations where the refugees have fled to, whether within Ukraine. We're also going to be going to Moldova and to Romania, to visit the projects there, and just meet with some of the people that have benefited from the work that we're able to do there.
What exactly is ADRA Canada sponsoring there? What type of projects?
So we're doing a couple different things. One is providing food assistance. A lot of that is through vouchers. So we're able to provide food vouchers. What that does is it empowers people to be able to have the resources to go and purchase what they would want, rather than us giving them, exactly. Yeah, they get what they need, what they want.
Right at the grocery store themselves. They can
exactly.
Use that. It's just like they're shopping with a credit card almost.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, many of these people, they've had to flee. They don't have access to their financial resources anymore. So by able to provide this to them, they're able to access that. There's other items as well. We're providing, assistance with. Actually, there's just got one that came in to help provide shelter and winterization, because some of the homes have been damaged. So there's a project taking place through ADRA right now to be able to help winterize some of those homes. And as they get into winter, I mean, Ukraine has winter similar to what we have here in Canada.
Sure, yeah. So
you don't want to have that with your windows blown out from a bomb blast.
Not Vancouver, Canada.
Not Vancouver, Canada either. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, while we're there, we're going to be able to visit a number of our different project locations, and I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to see some of the effects from the war, from the attacks that have taken place as well.
Yeah. Well, I will be praying for your safe travels, and I'm looking forward to your return.
Yes,
safe
absolutely.
return. I want to thank you for joining us here today. I wonder, as we have you here, if you might just have a special appeal to our supporters for this important fundraising campaign that we're entering.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we launch this Justice at the Table campaign, just like to appeal to each and every one of you. I truly believe that as Christians, we have not just a duty, but also we have a desire to provide for those that are less fortunate. So as we launch this campaign, please take a moment just to seek out how you can help support this worthy cause that we are proceeding with.
Well, thank you, Steve. Right now we have another song for you that was written and composed, produced by Naomi Streamer. Back in 2009, I accompanied her on a trip to Kenya and Sudan, and it was a time of hunger then as well, and the song that she wrote back then has real meaning for us today. Let's take a look at that now.
Starving, where children are dying, and there's not a place to lay their heads to sleep. You hear them all, the truth crying for free. to start trying and shed some light in this dying world tonight. If we could turn the hand of time, we wouldn't be broken. But we're here, we're now, let's stand together and say we can carry the weight. We can stop all the strife and get through anything in our way. We can conquer this fight. We can bring back what's right. We'll never have to feel hurt again if we all give a little from heaven with love. There is a war inside that's raging, a famine that keeps begging for someone to hear a mother's plea tonight. If we all give a little bit, we won't feel helpless. It's our brother, sister, friend we're reaching to say we can carry the weight. We can stop all the strife and get through anything in our way. We can conquer this fight. We can bring back what's right. We'll never have to feel hurt again if we all give a little from heaven with love. It's our time and it's our place. Open your heart and feel the embrace. Every door you open will save a life if we can carry the weight and stop all the strife and get through anything in our way. We can conquer this fight. We can bring back what's right. We'll never have to feel hurt again if we all give a little from heaven with love. From heaven with love.
With me here now in our studio as our guest is Douglas Piera. You know, I think this is actually the first time that you've been on our podcast. You've been with ADRA now for about 9 months, right? Serving as the director of the Philanthropy and Marketing Department.
Yeah, since Monday, that's the new name of our department, right?
Yes, it used to be Supporter Relations Department, right? SRD. We're used to saying that. And so if you saw me stumbling a little bit on the new name of our department here at ADRA Canada, that's the reason. It's brand new this week. Philanthropy and Marketing.
That's
Okay.
right, yeah.
And you're the director.
Well, they put me there to approve timesheets, I say, right? And work with a wonderful group of people, and you are part of this team, where we try to bring awareness of what ADRA is doing here in Canada and around the world, and try to get the support, the financial support, the advocacy that is necessary to bring change and somehow show the love of God.
Right. Well, I thank you I know you've had a very busy schedule this week, and so I really appreciate you taking your time to be with us for this live event. And share with us your vision for reaching this goal of $2.4 million. That's, I think, the largest campaign that we've ever done at ADRA Canada. And so at first glance, it may seem a little bit ambitious, but as we've worked together and our department has laid out a plan, it seems to me that we will be able to achieve this goal, 2.4 million.
Yeah, God is the owner of the silver and the gold. So we rely that God will provide the means for us to show his love to others. So even before I go to this $2.4 million, I think it's important for us to understand that we live in this moment that I do believe that is just prior to the second coming of Jesus. And the signs of the second coming said that we'll have hunger, right?
Yeah.
But you may say, we always had people starving, but not in the intensity and how can I put, in frequency that we have right now. We are facing one of the worst humanitarian situations with this hunger crisis. Unfortunately, we don't hear the news, and somehow you and your guests are laying down these aspects. So we are living in the end times. But it's important that Jesus, when he was talking about in Matthew 24 about the second coming and the signs of the second coming, and he mentioned about not having food for people, he said about lack of love being one of the signs of the second coming. And Frank, these days or this week, I was thinking why Jesus would say that during the end time would be a lack of love. But at the same time, in John 13, he says that the way people recognize that we are true disciples of Jesus is through what?
Through
love.
the love, yes. Yeah.
So would Jesus say, during this time of the end of the time and the world, where there is no love and there's earthquakes, wars, and hunger, could be the way to proclaim the good news, showing the love.
Right.
More than ever, we're showing the love. So I don't want to say here that we're talking about fundraising money. We are talking about showing
the
love.
Yeah.
Justice at the table. And I love the set that you have here. You have a table.
Right. Justice at the table.
Right? It's love at the table. It is not fair for you and I have a meal, 3 meals a day sometimes. And having someone not having a meal a week.
All. Yeah, that's right.
And more, like millions of people. And by October, November, that would just escalate because of the circumstances. So as Christians, we need to do something. We need to bring the justice of God, because God, since the beginning, he provided the food. When God created human beings according to his image and likeness, one of the first things that he did, he gave them food, provision. So when people don't have food, they don't look like God or the original plan, the blueprint. And the salvation plan, it is about restoring the image and likeness of God. So providing food is part of the salvation plan. And I think it's important for us because I know we have a lot of church members watching right now, and maybe even consider why the church should worry about that. We should be preaching this message, that message, the second. Why? Because food is part of the message of the second coming, the show of love, and the restoration of the image and likeness on the human beings.
I don't know if our viewers can tell, but you were a pastor before you took this position. Is that right?
Yeah, a preacher.
A preacher, yes. You can tell. It comes through, I think, as you speak about this, but it also, your excitement, enthusiasm, and passion, I think, is coming through when you talk about this.
Yeah, that's personal, right? I have family members that face, even my parents, not having what you eat. And that's not fair. That's not God's plan. And as Christians, we need to do something. We need to show love, right? And I think that is a foundation that I want to make sure. We're not about talking about money. We're talking about love. And this love can be displayed by financial resources. Maybe someone doesn't have the financial resource money to give, but they have their network, their time, someone that they can connect and make sure that people are aware what is happening and what we can do to make the difference.
Yeah. Love is the key then.
Love is the key.
Yeah.
Showing love.
When we get down to practical methods, I've been impressed, at least I can say, in the meetings and the planning we've put into this campaign for this fall. And when are we launching this campaign, by the way?
So officially, we are launching on October 15.
Okay.
So it's Saturday, October 15. It's one day before the World Food Day.
Okay.
That is October 16.
So that's very appropriate
Yeah,
then.
but we are talking right now, starting today, right, to create awareness. What is happening here? Are you aware of this hunger crisis? Are you aware of the campaign that ADRA is organizing to address this, right?
Yes.
So it's our awareness phase before we jump on the action, let's
Right.
say.
We want people to be thinking about it, praying about it, planning how they might become involved and
Networking,
getting their
right?
church involved.
That's right. So I know you have Steve, and Steve mentioned about how the church can get involved, right? As you mentioned, that is, I think, the most aggressive campaign that ADRA Canada has organized, right? $2.4 million. That has been sometimes even the budget or
For the year.
For the year. And now we're talking about a campaign. We almost there with $1 million for Ukraine, right? We are a little bit short on our goals for Ukraine. And now we have this $2.4 million, right? So in order to accomplish that, we've prayed and say, God, how we can reach out to people. What are different venues or ways so we can connect? So we saw this idea of having at least 100 churches in order to try to raise at least $500,000. If each church of those 100 raise $5,000,
Right.
we could get to this 500,000.
100 churches raising a goal of 5,000 each. Now, some churches are smaller.
Yeah, and that's the reason we are not saying to any church how much they're supposed to raise. They get together because some churches say, you know what, for us, 500 would be the best. But other churches say, you know what, we can do $20,000.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Right? But our goal is, can we see the church coming together and see at least $500,000 from that perspective, right? We have another approach that was designed to our major givers,
Right.
people that throughout the history of ADRA Canada have donated $5,000 or more in a year for ADRA.
Right.
We are calling them the matching angels.
The matching angels. Okay.
That's right.
You know, we had Steve do a video directed directly to these major donors, these matching angels. And I'd like our viewers to maybe take a look at that in case they might want to become a matching angels.
That's right, because the matching angels are starting right now already, right? They are part of this fundraising, special fundraising group before the lunch. But let's watch that
Yeah,
video.
let's take a look at that.
Hi, I'm Steve Matthews, Executive Director of ADRA Canada, and if you're seeing this video, it means that you are already an ADRA donor. Your contributions have made a life-saving difference to countless people around the world, and your generosity is deeply appreciated, not only by us at ADRA, but also by those who you have empowered us to help and serve in communities worldwide. Today, I am asking for your help in creating a matching fund for a new campaign we are launching to fight the ongoing hunger crisis. As you can see, I'm about to eat a proper, nutritious meal. This food will give me the energy and strength I need to attend to my responsibilities today. But for over 825 million people right now, a solid meal like this is an unattainable dream. Of this number, 345 million are forced by circumstances beyond their control to take desperate measures just to survive. And despite such efforts by devoted parents, malnutrition still ends up causing nearly half of all deaths in children under the age of 5. Unfortunately, forces like climate change, inflation, supply chain disruptions, the economic fallout from COVID-19, previously existing injustices, and now the war in Ukraine, all have converged at this moment as the perfect storm for hunger in countries all around the world. Too often, those who suffer from such extreme food insecurity also lack the resources to advocate for themselves. They lack not only food on their table, but also a seat at the table. That is why ADRA is launching a new campaign, Justice at the Table. This fall, we are raising funds to fight against hunger, to give back the strength and empowerment that people need to rebuild their lives. Our goal is to raise $2.4 million by March 31st, 2023. If we can do this, our partnership with the Canadian Food Grains Bank will allow us to multiply that amount to $15 million. This money will go towards programs that will, of course, provide people with food to eat and nutrition programs to bring back the most malnourished from the brink of starvation. But our programs are also designed to train and empower communities to grow their own food using the resources and space available to them, and to do so in ways that are sustainable and resilient against the ongoing forces of climate change. Your contribution to this program will not only feed people, but will empower them and reassert their agency over their own lives. And so, we are asking you to be one of our matching angels. Our plan is to offer a matching fund of at least $500,000 when the campaign is publicly launched on October 15th, 2022. If you and 99 other donors were to give $5,000 to the Matching Angels Fund, we would be able to meet that goal and thereby increase the effectiveness of the whole campaign. When potential donors see that there is money available to match their gift, the average dollar amount given increases by 41%, and the number of donations increases by about 110%. Simply put, your contribution to the Matching Angels Fund can help to massively multiply the money we can mobilize towards this worthy cause. Along with this video, you will be receiving information about the different ways you can donate to the fund and to raise awareness among others. We are eager to partner with you in numerous ways to uproot the causes of hunger and inequality in our world. Today it seems that circumstances are difficult for everyone, but here at ADRA, we believe that the real solution is for people to band together, to be generous, and to create the kind of world where we all eagerly care for one another. The only sustainable future is love. It is time to dethrone hunger and to set a place for justice at the table. Thank you for your support.
All right, so that gives us a good idea of how people can become a matching angel. And we're looking for more of those right now, right?
That's right.
Before the campaign really starts.
That's right. Because we realize when people see there is a possibility of matching, they are willing to donate more.
Right.
Get more motivated. Again, we're talking about $15 million project.
15, not 50.
15, thank you.
15.
You know, the Brazilian accent sometimes comes and not so clear, so I appreciate you clarifying, because at the end of the day, the message needs to be clear, right? With our partnership, we'll be able to raise $15 million if we have 2.4 million.
Okay, so that's what we need to raise, but actually the total amount is 15.
That's right.
That will
and
be
helping
used.
13 countries.
Right. Yeah, 13.
That's such a blessing. I know there's so much more to do, but we can make the difference at least in 13 countries.
And once we have that $500,000 figure from the matching angels, and we can promote in our messaging that our donors' gifts will be matched, right?
That's
one to
right.
one.
That's right, at least.
Yeah.
And maybe God will open the doors, we'll have more matching funds coming.
Right.
Our goal, our dream, our prayer is at least $500,000.
Okay.
Right? So we can see $500,000 coming from our matching angel program, another 500 coming from the churches
Right.
together, right? But we are thinking about how our schools can get involved, right?
Right, exactly. We have a number of schools across Canada that this would be a wonderful campaign for them to
That's
get
right.
involved in.
We have organizations, companies, business that need to fulfill their social goals, right? How they can partner. So we're trying to find different ways to share this crisis and how we're trying to address and ask for the support that comes through prayer, a support that comes through having more people speaking and talking about, advocating for this cause, and more people donating, supporting financially, right? But at the end of the day, it's not about money. It's about love.
Yes.
It's about salvation. It's about restoring the image of God and the likeness of God and human beings. And that is related to the vision, right, of ADRA,
Right.
right?
So that all may live as God intended.
Yeah. So that goes back. So justice at the table.
So it's a wonderful campaign name, I think. It makes you think every time you hear it about those people that are living out there, and I've met so many that don't have justice at the table. And so I am so happy to be involved in this campaign that we're doing this fall. Well, Doug, thank you so much for taking your time today and sharing with us your passion, your vision, and I think it has built in me a new desire to do more in this campaign. I love the way that you present it. It's an issue of love, and I think as we approach it that way, our giving will have a more true foundation, really. You know, Venezuela is one of the countries on our list, and we received a very emotional video from the country of Venezuela, and I'd like to share that now. Let's take a look.
My name is Rosemary. I am a single mother and I have 6 children. One lives with my mother and the rest live with me here in a rented room. Things are very difficult for us. We don't have much space. We all sleep together on one bed. I have not been able to pay my rent now for many months, and my landlord wants us out. I keep telling him that we have nowhere else to go. He has taken off our door, and we are exposed to the elements with no security. There are so many holes in our roof that we get soaked whenever it rains. A friend of mine used to look after my children when I was away at work every day, but now she is gone and my children are left alone. The older boys try and find odd jobs to make a little money. I take my baby with me to work. My day starts at 4 a.m. I work selling vegetables and seasonings in a market that is a long walk from my home. Since I have no money to buy vegetables, I need to first borrow money from a moneylender. I do my best to sell as much as I can, but there are many other women in the market who are also selling the same vegetables. Some days I make a profit, and other days I do not. In my country, inflation is a big problem. Sometimes the dollar has gone up so much in just one day that between that and the lender's fees, I owe much more than I borrowed at the beginning of the day. This means that some days I am able to bring food home to my children, and other days I am not. ADRA has saved my life. They were a real answer to my prayers. Every night I cried out to God. I pled with Him to see me, to see my children and send us help. That is when ADRA came. They have been such a big help to me and my family. It has been such a blessing. They have provided food and other support. I am so grateful for what ADRA has done. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I hope that you have enjoyed this program this evening. If you have, I would invite you to share it with your friends. Let people know at church tomorrow the ADRA program that you saw, and let them know that they can still watch it. Even though this is a live event, it will now be saved to all of our media outlets, all of our social media outlets, as well as our broadcast outlets. It'll be on Vimeo and Amazon Fire, Roku, as well as YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn. We're almost everywhere online. And so you'll be able to easily find it. In fact, after a couple of days, Google will probably pick it up. And so just by Googling Justice at the Table, you will probably be able to find this broadcast as well as other videos that we are releasing and will release over the next few months to help support and encourage people to get involved in this important campaign. Thank you again so much for viewing our program this evening. Maybe we should just close with a word of prayer. Please join me. Our Father in heaven, as we look out into our world today and we see the pain and suffering that people are experiencing, how they don't have enough food to eat, we know how you were so concerned about the suffering of the people that you met when you were here on this earth, and we pray that you will also give us that same compassion so that we may be inspired to do the work that you did while you were here. I pray that you will be with each one viewing this broadcast and that you will fill their hearts with this same love. I ask this now in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you again for watching tonight, and may God bless you.